All right. So the following is a simulated role play. Hey, Joanna, thank you for coming back in. It's so nice to have you. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So before we get started, I just wanted to check in over the past couple weeks. I believe it's been close to a month since we last met. Um, I got a lot of information from you last session, and I really, really appreciate all that you gave me. I know a lot of that was not easy to share, and I just wanted to check and make sure that the situation was still similar to what it was a month ago. So in the past, since we last met, have you noticed anything changing in your life situation, in where the problem is between you and your partner?
Um, Not really. I mean, I've picked up a few more shifts at the grocery store, but in general, like the relationship with my partner is still a little rocky.
Got you. Well, it's awesome that you're picking up more shifts. Have those been going well?
Yeah, they're more exhausting. I ended up having to have other people within the kindergarten take care of my son after class so that I could work more. But they're more than happy to do it.
Got you. How has other people stepping in to take care of your son affected your relationship with your son?
Yeah, so I guess like picking up more shifts, I don't see him as much. Excuse me. And it's a little bit difficult for me because I have spent the majority of his childhood so far with him every day, and I revolved my work schedule around his school schedule so that I could be with him just because I didn't have that when I was growing up, and I didn't want him to deal with the same thing. Um, but he loves hanging out with his friends. So, like the times that we do have together, it's more special, I guess.
Got you. Um, I should have mentioned this before we started, but I have a pen and paper here. And I was planning on taking notes if that's comfortable with you. If at any
Mhm.
point you want to see the notes or want to ask any questions about the notes, you are more than welcome to.
Yeah, that's good.
Um, in addition, because I am a male practitioner, um, I may I may not see things um in the exact way as it is. So if I am not understanding your position or I'm missing the mark as a result of my identities, please feel more than welcome to let me know so.
Okay.
Um, so you mentioned that you didn't want to give your son the same situation that you had growing up. Did you want to talk about that a little more?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like my mother, like I think I mentioned it in the last session. She did physically abuse me and my siblings before the whole divorce happened. So it was not the best experience of having a mother figure in my life. I don't even know if I would consider it a mother figure. But yeah, it was not fun growing up. I mean, I enjoyed growing up with just my dad, but it was difficult because everyone else around me had a mother, and I did not know what it was like.
Gotcha. I appreciate you sharing that with me. You did mention that in the previous session, and I didn't further that conversation, and I'd like to apologize for that.
No, you're fine.
Um, so just so I understand, you did experience physical abuse growing up, and that's really impacted how you'd like to show up as a parent for your child.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I appreciate you sharing that with me again. Um, do you want to talk more about the divorce?
Yeah, I mean, I was still young. I don't know what age I was when they divorced. But once my mom left the scene, or I guess the house, no one had any relationship with her. I never heard from her. Um, she didn't have any support for us. Like we didn't, my dad didn't receive money from her. to raise us, so he was working multiple jobs to make sure he could feed me and my other siblings. But yeah, I guess like the divorce wasn't really shocking. They were always arguing, but it was never like something super serious. It was always like tiny bickering every now and then. But yeah, I guess like we weren't shocked, but we were also just like struck with reality.
Got you. So that's obvious, or I apologize, I don't want to say obvious. Um, it seems like that's impacted how you want to show up as a mother.
Yeah.
Um, are there any specific things you try to change from your experiences as a child to your experience as a parent?
Yeah, so anytime like me and my partner are arguing, which seems to be a lot within the last few years or so,
Mhm.
I try to handle it outside of where my child is, just because I don't want him to see or her to see where, or I don't want her to see that we're arguing, just because I think it does traumatize or leave some sort of negative impact on a kid. And then I guess like just spending more time with my child, just to make sure like they know they have a mother. And although they don't have their biological father involved in this, that they do um have a father figure, which is my partner. So I try to make sure that they spend time with him, and also like as a family, and then also just with me.
Got you. And I think that's something very, very respectful to your child to do, to take those arguments outside the space that they're in. Just so I don't make a mistake moving forward, do you mind if I ask which pronouns your child uses?
My child uses she, her.
She, her.
Hmm.
I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Yeah, no problem.
And just so I know for sure, is this information that I can share with my staff in case it somehow comes up?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. So moving into the now and working towards the future, I wanted to see if you were open to starting to develop some goals in our work together. When we talked last time, it sounded like your big goals were to boost your sense of self-worth. Um, you worded it as to become a better mother and a better partner. And then finally, a goal to work on your current financial situation.
Hmm.
Does that sound accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, what I was hoping we could do is something called the miracle question. Are you familiar with it?
No.
Okay. So, the miracle question is, if you were to go to bed tonight and overnight a miracle were to happen and everything about the current problem you have has been fixed, but you were asleep when it happened, so you don't realize that that change has happened. So you wake up the next morning, you think everything is still the same, and you go to begin to go out like throughout your day. What would what would change in your day-to-day life for you to be able to recognize that that miracle happened?
Um, it's a good question. I guess I'm looking at it more financially. Like I wouldn't have to worry where my child is going to get food from each night. And I think like me and my partner would not argue as much as we do, because the financial aspect is no longer an issue with us. Yeah, I think maybe I would not be working at the grocery store. I think I would be working somewhere else that's full time. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Maybe moving out of the apartment that we live in and like having a home for us. So that we could live on our own away from other people in the same area, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think that's what I would imagine.
I understand. Um, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. The miracle question, I've also received it before. It is not a fun question I have to answer on the spot. So to summarize, if this miracle were to happen, the biggest changes you would notice were having no worries about how to feed your child on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
You'd have less arguments with your partner, specifically no arguments surrounding financial situations. You would have a full-time position, most likely not at the grocery store anymore. And you guys would live in more of a permanent house instead of the apartment that you currently live in.
Mhm.
Okay. So it sounds like the financial aspect is really, really important to solving this whole situation.
Yeah.
Okay. And if it's comfortable with you, would you like to make this our biggest focus of setting goals and building change?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sounds good. Um, I also, as we begin to set up goals, wanted to look at in our past session, we talked about uh, you having a history of both postpartum depression and generalized anxiety.
Mhm.
And I was hoping we could do a screening for um for those symptoms. I know those happened in the past. Um, but due to uh you mentioning that you were experiencing less sleep, somewhere around like 5 hours of sleep a night,
Mhm.
um, a recurring feeling of like nervousness and anxiety during the arguments with your partner. I was hoping we could go through those again to see how they potentially show themselves in this issue. Sweet. So to start with the first assessment, I'm going to be asking about the past 2 weeks. So for the first question, in the past 2 weeks, have how frequently have you experienced having little interest or pleasure in doing things? And for all these questions, the responses are not at all, several days, more than half the days, so more than 7 days, or nearly every single day.
Um, I would say several days.
All right. How about feeling down, depressed, or hopeless?
Um, more than half.
Mm-hmm. Experiencing feelings of tiredness or having little energy?
Um, probably almost every day.
I understand. Having poor appetite or overeating?
Um, more than half.
Uh, trouble cons- trouble concentrating on things.
Um, several days.
The next question is moving or speaking so slowly that other people could have noticed, or being so fidgety or restless that you have been moving a lot more than usual.
Um, probably nearly every day.
Nearly every day.
Mhm.
For that question, do you mind if I ask if I asked to just elaborate a little more on what that looks like?
Yeah, so I guess like picking up more shifts, I've been like more like restless just because like I don't get enough sleep in general, but like I have been working more hours, which I'm not used to. So like my schedule is really off, and then I'm also like more concerned about spending time with my child. So it's just like I don't know, I'm making sure like my partner and my child are taken care of before I can be taken care of, which makes me more like anxious to get more shifts and like earn more income.
I understand. So it sounds like you've been really worked down to the bone.
Mhm.
That can be really hard and make things a lot harder. The next question is, in the past week, how many times have you experienced thoughts that you'd be better off dead or thoughts of hurting yourself in some way?
Um, Not hurting myself, but like thinking if I wasn't here anymore, probably like more than half of the days.
More than half of the days.
Yeah.
And the last question is, how difficult have these problems made it to do work, take care of things at home, such as with your child, or get along with other people?
Um,
And the responses are not at all, somewhat difficult, very difficult, or extremely difficult.
Probably very difficult.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Would you like to know the results of the screening?
Sure.
All right. So from this assessment, um, you scored 14 points, which suggests moderate depression severity. And the recommendation is to have a treatment plan ranging from either counseling, um, follow up, or pharmacotherapy. So potentially medication. Would this be something you'd be interested in working together with?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that was extremely helpful for me because now we can better understand that there may be symptoms of depression that are factoring into this entire situation and how things are handled. So the next screening is for generalized anxiety disorder. Um, I believe, just so I understand the history, you had a diagnosis for generalized anxiety disorder in high school.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Um, so the questions still fall on the lines response wise of not at all, several days, more than half the days, or nearly every day. And it also focuses on the past 2 weeks.
Okay.
So, over the last 2 weeks, how often have you felt nervous, anxious, or on edge?
Um, Nearly every day.
Okay. How often have you felt not being able to stop or control worry?
Um, more than half the days.
The next question is worrying too much about different things
Probably every day.
every day. Trouble relaxing,
Every day.
being so restless that it's hard to sit still.
Mm, maybe more than half the days.
Becoming easily annoyed or irritable.
Um, more than half.
More than half. And finally, feeling afraid as if something awful might happen.
Mm, more than half.
More than half. Right. So for all the symptoms that you presented, how difficult have they made it for you to do your work, take care of things at home, or to get along with other people?
Um, what are the
Oh,
like
yes.
options? No, you're good.
So the options are not difficult at all, somewhat difficult, very difficult, and extremely difficult.
I would say very difficult.
All right. And if you'll give me just 1 second, I can tally up the total. And then would you like to know that total?
Sure.
Okay. So for this test, you scored a 17, which indicates severe anxiety. So it's very understandable that there's a lot going on right now.
Hmm.
Having these arguments with your partner, as well as having the financial stress, there's a lot that you are going through on a daily basis. And I really appreciate you taking time to come in, work with someone like me, so that we can work together and take steps forward to move forward with all this. So I was hoping that we could start by just setting a couple small goals, almost like little experiments between session to session, to try in your life before our next session to see if they're helping or not.
Okay.
I know you said that your child, her name's William, right?
Hmm.
So William is still in um a half day program, right?
Hmm.
Okay. And I understand that that might make it a lot harder to find full-time employment at the moment.
Yeah.
So, what do you think is a small step we could take between now and our next session that could help so that we have that miracle situation, so that we can wake up the next morning and have no arguments with your partner about the financial situation? There's at least a decreased worry about how to feed William and how to get to that full-time position.
Um, maybe start looking at, I feel like in order to get a full-time job, um, like maybe getting a higher education than what I have. So, between this session and the next session, maybe start looking at possible programs that can accommodate me working, um, and also taking classes.
Got you. I think that's an amazing first step to take. And just so you can hold yourself accountable as well, and so that I can better track our progress, how can we look at that specifically? Like
Um,
how can we measure that goal? Is there a certain number we can set of programs we can look into?
um, I think maybe having at least four different programs. Um, because I really don't know what I want to do, so maybe like just finding four different programs.
I understand. I think that's an amazing goal to set. And if you are comfortable with it, I am more than happy to help discuss and look into those programs that you found between our sessions together, if that would be helpful to you.
Yeah, I would. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, no problem at all. Again, I'm here to make sure that every session is as helpful to you as possible. So any way I can tailor my work with you to fit your needs and your goals better, I am more than happy to help with. So it sounds like by the next session, we will have 4 programs in higher education that could accommodate for your work schedule where you can still take classes.
Mhm.
Does that sound correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then are there any other goals that you'd like to set before the next session?
Um, I guess like if possible, um, looking for full-time jobs that don't require a higher education as well. Maybe like finding like 2 or 3.
So looking for 2 or 3 full-time positions that do not require higher education.
Yeah.
Got you. I think those are great goals to set. And just so you know, for our next session, obviously I apologize. Um, it would be amazing to have both of these goals met, but life also happens.
Mhm.
So if for whatever reason we're unable to have both these goals met by the next session, that is totally okay. All I ask is for you to put in the effort to reach the goals that you'd like to reach so that we can work together in the most productive way possible.
Mhm.
All right. Um, so just some final notes before we wrap up. I've got our 2 goals written down. We were able to do our 2 separate screenings, and I was able to get a better understanding of your history, especially with family dynamics.
Mhm.
Does that sound like a good summary of the session?
Yeah.
Got you. And I appreciate all the work you've put in and all the information that you've given me. Is there anything else you'd like to share with me or anything else going on before we begin to wrap things up?
Um, no, not that I can think of.
Okay. One last thing that I'd like to do before we wrap up, because you did um present the potential for moderate depression severity and for severe anxiety, is one last small screening. So over the past 2 weeks, have you had any wish that you didn't have to go on living or have thoughts of wanting to die?
Um, just a few, but not anything that was like every single day.
A few. Would you say several times a week?
Yeah.
Okay. And have you had any thoughts of wanting to take your own life or having specific suicidal thoughts?
No.
Okay. Have you um had any thoughts about a method to take your own life?
No.
Okay. And about how long do these thoughts last for when you do experience them?
Um, maybe like 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Are you able to control these thoughts?
Yeah, usually.
Okay. How do you go about controlling them?
Um, it really depends on like where I am. Like if I'm working, I like to distract myself, so just like working, doing more. And then if I'm arguing with my partner, I usually just like take time away from him, just remove myself from the situation.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you have pretty active control over these thoughts and are able to stop them.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And those are very good coping skills to have to put that energy into active work, or especially to take yourself out of those situations. I believe the last session when we talked, you said that you would go on walks to help process everything.
Hmm.
Gotcha. I appreciate you sharing all this with me. So between now and our next session, if you need anything at all, please feel more than welcome to reach out to me, or any of my staff. We can get you in an earlier date. Or before you leave, I can give you the number for the suicide prevention hotline if these feelings ever become more out of control and you need to reach out to someone. Does that sound good? All right. I appreciate all our work together. Our next session is on December 11th. And by then, I hope that we can have those 4 programs that can accommodate for your work schedule as well. And then the 2 to 3 full-time positions that do not require higher education. Does that all sound good? All right. Thank you, Joanne. I'll see you on December 11th.
Awesome. See ya.